GearNetwork.com.
This is a Gear Network production.
You spring, I spring, we all spring for Teespring. You know what that means? As corny as that was, yes, I know it was corny as hell, we have a t-shirt store. It is up and it is running. And right now we have 8 shirts, but it is growing. The merchandise is growing. Right now we have shirts going from as little as $13 for a TJCMS first t-shirt to $20 for a Gear Network logo t-shirt. All of them available to be delivered right to your front door. You choose your size, you choose your style, and you go. It's as simple as that, and there are plenty more t-shirts to come, but take a look at our Teespring store. If you go to GearNetwork.com, under the Support the Shows banner and 4 links down is Gear Merchandise. That will take you directly to our Teespring store, and you can see all of our selection of our current shirts right now, our current merchandise. Thank you again for all of your support and using our links on GearNetwork.com.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building. To keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, welcome to episode 21 of Trust the Podcast, the Draftcap, if you will. I am your co-host, Ryan Wolfe, at WolfeBLTD on Twitter. Not joined by Del Reed today, who is enjoying the Buffalo Bills offseason, but I'm joined today by WGR's Jeremy White, who we'll have an interview with in just a second. Before we get started, though, just want to point out, again, make sure you're following us on Twitter at BLTD Sports, Facebook.com/BLTD Sports. Check us out over at BetterLiveThanDead.com. And stay tuned. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Google Play Music, so that way you get the latest episodes of Trust the Podcast and all BLTD podcasts sent directly to your phone. Joining me now on the IndyCar Media Hotline, we have local radio legend, I guess we could say, especially after this weekend. It's been a tough couple of days for you. I've been listening for sure. We have Jeremy White from WGR at Jeremy WGR on the line right now. How you been, man?
Doing good. I don't even know why it's been a tough couple of days, but I think you're right because the Bills made a move and it wasn't universally celebrated. So sometimes when you're like, oh, I don't know about that, people think that you hate them and they hate you for it.
Selfishly, I recently got a new job, and selfishly, I have a ride. So I'm very glad for myself that I'm able to listen in the morning because it's been a fun lead up to the draft. And I know that you yourself and Howard both have been very this and that. You've not, we hate this guy, we hate that guy, we like this guy, we like that guy. You've been on the fence. You've done a very good job. But yes, the day after, what we will talk about here in just a moment, certainly I'm glad that you're still standing. Because it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, it was. What can we say? It was both a surprise and totally expected at the same time.
Absolutely,
we thought they would trade up. We thought they'd get a quarterback. I thought they would pass on Josh Rosen, and they did all those 3 things. And yet, I come away with it surprised. But why am I surprised? I expected all 3 of those things to happen.
I think a lot of it is too, before we jump into the first question here, I think a lot of it really is kind of like what happened with the Sabres last night on what is it, Saturday? It was Saturday, yeah. What happened then? You expected, you expect the worst, you hope for the best. And this time finally the best happened. But, if the Sabres had ended up with the, 3rd or 4th pick last night, everyone would have it would have been bedlam, even though, you're still getting, a pretty good player. You look at what the Bills did on in the first round of the draft, I should say. You pick up Josh Allen, which granted it may not have been the most universally loved pick. At the end of the day, he's still a pretty good player. So that brings me to my first question here. With Josh Allen now being the guy that both Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have kind of anointed as the future under center, have the Bills made the right choice, or do you think it's still way, way, way too early to say?
It's definitely too early, but I'm not yet sure that he is a good player. That's the thing. Every one of these guys had a knock against them, and Allen's knock was, well, he's not really that good at playing quarterback. So he's got a lot of the things you can't teach, and I think what the Bills do with this move is they say, all right, we have faith in our coaching staff that we can coach the problems out of him and the inaccuracy issues out of him, and we can teach him to, read defenses a little bit faster, because Allen is a guy that, the scouting report is he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he throws it hard. And outside of that, there's not much else. I mean, he didn't go to a power conference. The fact that he was a 0-star recruit, like all signs point to, you could say underdog, but I would say all signs point to a relative nobody in the quarterbacking world. And yet he has these abilities that lead certain teams to believe that he can be turned into something. I want to make a comparison to like Yao Ming, or if you happen across a giant person that's never played basketball, you say, you should play basketball. Like at some point, somebody decided that Josh Allen, like, wow, you throw it 80 yards and you are 6'5", you should play quarterback. And Wyoming got that, junior college to Wyoming. It's like just a very unusual path. So it doesn't mean he's going to be bad, but if he is good and worth the pick, it'll be because he's better in the pros than he ever was in college. Like that's the thing about him. He might end up being, if he's good, the worst college player ever to be really good.
That's terrifying. Yeah. I mean, you see the articles that were coming out. I know SB Nation and Bleacher Report were doing a great job. They just looked at the stats and flat out said, you can sit there, like you mentioned, the hands, the size, the arm, that's great, but you can't teach that. Yes, you can't teach size, you can't teach, strength or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you can't hit the broadside of a barn, and we've seen all the videos. I know the one, my favorite of Josh Allen was when Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield were trying to hit the little 3 squares at the Senior Bowl. And Mayfield, got pushed left, got pushed right, went back, went forward, and then nailed it. And then Josh Allen back, forward, left, right, and then just overshoots it. And it's kind of tough to watch. But that's like you said, it's one of those situations where I would have to assume that the Bills have a lot of confidence in their coaching staff, which we have seen already. I mean, they're still in their infant stages, but we've seen a lot of faith in that coaching staff. Maybe they feel super confident that they can do something. Because I mean, again, we've seen that, the Bills are trying to kind of mirror themselves like the Carolina Panthers. And despite the Panthers having Cam Newton, we know they don't put a lot of faith in the forward passing game. So maybe that also kind of plays into it a lot. I'm not sure. But yeah, like you said, it's terrifying to see what he did and say he's somehow going to just miraculously overnight develop and say, you know what, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in college, but now I'm, one of the best. It's just terrifying to think.
Yeah, and in terms of faith in their coaching staff, they hired an offensive coordinator that, I guess they don't understand how many times they've been asked, like, why this guy? He's from Buffalo, which is nice. He's worked with the Patriots. He's worked with Alabama, so he's been a part of winning programs. But in the NFL, he has not had success, and he's not had good quarterbacks. So you can say, well, he didn't have success because he didn't have good quarterbacks. But you don't exactly have a well-established offensive guru bringing this guy up. In fact, there are some stories that when the Bills' offensive coordinator was in Cleveland with Colt McCoy, like it went really poorly for Colt McCoy, who was a third-round pick. So, the Bills are putting faith in a staff that they just hired. And did they hire him for Josh Allen, or did Josh Allen get drafted for him? Like, it's the kind of scenario where, every team's going to say they have faith. Every team's going to say they believe in what they're doing, but not all of them are going to execute it, the way that they want to. So I'm not trying to sound like a downer. I'm trying to sound like more of a doubter, or someone that's not just going to believe that because they believe in it, it's going to work. For the Bills, they've got a very inaccurate quarterback that lacks a lot of the things that you want in your guy, and their offensive coordinator has never really had success on his own outside of last year in Alabama, and Alabama always wins. So we'll see. Maybe this is his opportunity to finally really build something of his own, and if so, he could be the next star. And then the question becomes, if your offensive coordinator ends up doing really good things, usually that guy gets hired somewhere else. So it's just funny how it all works out. The Bills have a defensive coach, and yet they have an unproven guy ready to bring up this raw quarterback. If it all works out, everyone's going to be very much celebrated and get bigger jobs and better jobs, and everyone's going to be happy. But I don't really see a lot of, this is definitely going to work. I think more about Pat Shurmur in New York. They did not draft a quarterback, which I think they should have. Pat Shurmur has shown that with Case Keenum, he can put up a pretty potent passing game, even though it's just Case Keenum. And Shurmur, just this week, was talking about quarterbacks and arm strength, and he ranked it as the 4th thing he cares about, behind accuracy and mental acuity and intelligence. The Bills got the guy with the number one arm strength, but does he have the rest of the stuff? I don't know. And does their coaching staff have what it takes to bring a guy along? I don't know that either. So a lot of unproven people all getting together, and we'll see if it works.
And I know at the end of the day, a lot of people keep echoing, and even the Bills keep echoing the trust the process, and I get that. I mean, look at the name of the podcast here. We're all drinking the Kool-Aid for sure, but like you said, it's not necessarily a bad thing to sit back and say, okay, because as time goes on, you start to notice, okay, they like to do X, Y, Z, and they don't like to do these other things. They like to follow a specific plan. But looking at what they've done, you kind of start to wonder, okay, if this is what you're doing and you're putting your faith in this guy. I mean, we saw what they did with Tyrod Taylor. We saw what they did last year. And you kind of think, okay, well, they certainly had that mindset. They had that game plan, but now they've changed it all up, and they brought in a different guy, and they brought in AJ McCarron as well. And we'll see where it goes. But it's at the end of the day, there's still a lot of question marks, a lot of things that just still maybe they have to develop to make sense, but a couple it's not adding up, and something's not making sense here. And like you said, with the new offensive coordinator who previously didn't have success in the NFL, despite maybe not having the best situation, what makes the situation different, or how the coaching staff feels about Josh Allen. So like I said, it's a weird situation. I mean, we're going to learn either way. Either it's good. The cool thing about it is there's no real middle ground. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. I mean, if it's mediocre, it's probably still going to be bad, but I guess we'll find out sooner than later, but it's fair on your part. I know because it's your job to get yelled at by people who I guess I don't want to say are dumb, but sometimes the conscience, the lack of logic just sometimes evades them, and they just start to yell and scream. But when you look back at it, it's like, okay, well, here are some clear flaws, and here's what they've done before. It's not matching up. You try to plug, a plug in the wrong plug, it's not going to work. So if you continue to keep doing this, something's got to give. So yes, pointing out like what you're doing, pointing out that, hey, I'm not against the guy, because again, I'm personally not a huge fan of Josh Allen. I haven't been, but at the end of the day, he's the quarterback. He's the guy they chose. So either you're on board or you're not. It's certainly, like you said, it's a scenario where, kind of prove me wrong, because it's not looking too good on the surface. But hey, Camp could roll around and he could tear the cover off the ball and make everyone look super smart, and the Bills could be off to the races again. You never know.
Yeah, perhaps. But one thing about this Bills staff that's different, what does the drought do? The drought for some people means that the guys that ended the drought are magical, like, the trust the process stuff. Like I don't have any real, not respect for it, but I don't trust the process. I think they had a nice year last year, and a second year to build on that and drafting the right quarterback and all that will go into it. But in the course of the 17-year drought, how many coaches have been fired that did make the playoffs with their teams at some point? I mean, hundreds. So yeah. It's not exactly a massive accomplishment to have gone 9-7 and gotten a wild card berth and scored 3 points in the first round. The Bills did it, and it was a big deal. Well, good. They did that. It doesn't mean that they're perfect. It doesn't mean that they have some sort of magic formula. It just means that they did a thing that every other team had done over the course of the Bills' drought at least once. So, trust the process. It's a nice buzz phrase. We'll see. The process, if you want to talk about the process would say don't trade up. The process would say don't give up 2 second-round picks for a quarterback that, is he going to be a lot? He's got to be a lot better than Josh Rosen in order for that trade up to really be worth it. We'll see. There were 6 guys. I've got a mind to believe the Bills kind of thought they weren't going to be good that last year, and we're going to be drafting higher, but they snuck into the playoffs because of, an Andy Dalton play that was amazing. It was fun for everybody. But this idea that because they've made it, they've got some sort of secret potion that nobody else did before, like, no way. We had Bills teams that were better than last year's Bills team missed the playoffs, but, the rest of the league fell right. So, I like plenty about what I see in the coach and the GM, but it's by no means these are definitely the right kind of guys to have here.
And time will tell. But looking at the Bills this coming up season, the offense, clearly not only the quarterback, a lot of question marks, but just the offense as a whole, the offensive line, the wide receivers. Aside from LaShawn McCoy, do you really see anything about this offense that really steps out to you and says, what, this guy or player X is going to have a great year in this offense?
No.
That's fair.
That's it. That's it. No.
I mean, because you look at it, and I know the one thing that was kind of sticking in my craw the entire draft was that the Buffalo Bills were not drafting wide receivers. Granted, they got a couple late in the draft, but I mean, if you're going to battle with Kelvin Benjamin, Zay Jones, and then a handful of nuts and bolts and mixed parts, you're probably not going to have a good time. Yeah, Jeremy Curley, you're not going to have a good time. Do you see? I mean, again, this might be very open-ended or open and shut as well. Aside from Des Bryant, there's not really much out there, and I don't see Des Bryant coming to Buffalo of all places. Is there any way Buffalo can salvage this wide receiver core, or do you think it's kind of you get what you get and you're going to have a bad time?
I think you're going to have a bad time. It's one of the reasons I wanted them to draft one is because whoever you draft is probably not making much of an impact this season. You'd be looking more towards next season because rookie wide receivers, especially like taken outside the first round, don't historically make a big difference. So, like, I'd like to get some depth in the organization from that position. If it were me, I would have spent every pick. I mean, after Tremaine Edmonds, every single pick I would have spent on the offense. And the Bills spent like 4 in a row on the defense. So, more corners, more defensive linemen. Okay. I mean, you've got a defensive head coach who wants to build up his defense. This is an organization that probably wants to pride itself and have a defense and a run game and a quarterback that manages the game. Even though Josh Allen is a number for our first round pick, 7th overall, even though he's that, they'll probably spend the first year or two that he plays asking him not to lose games. So it's a mindset, and I think they're probably going to continue to be conservative and built through defense, as we've seen in 2 drafts. That's what they focus on.
Now, I know I did enjoy. I know you mentioned that the Buffalo Bills drafted a ton of defensive players. I was a big fan of Harrison Phillips out of Stanford. That was that seems like it'll be an under the radar type of pick. I know they got there were early. I mean, you get a big white guy who plays defensive tackle. A lot of people will say he's Kyle Williams, but that's the early sentiment. I mean, he kind of shot that down, but stuff like that. I think those picks will work out. But again, at the end of the day, I'm still scratching my head, both literally and figuratively, just sitting there wondering, okay, are you Kelvin Benjamin? You're probably not bringing him back after next season because you assume he's going to want a ton of money, and you're not going to give that kind of money to that guy in the situation you're currently in. Because as you said, the 9-7 season was great. It was fantastic. The playoffs were wonderful for the 20, 30 seconds it lasted. But at the end of the day, you have to remember where you're at, and this is a rebuild, not a run for the Super Bowl. You're the Bills. You're not the Patriots. So that's I guess that's a tough perspective to keep because people have kind of pulled the sheet over their own eyes and went, well, hey, they made the playoffs last year. They just have to win a couple games and they'll be there. And that's I think the perspective is still the tough part for most Bills fans, and that's I think for me that's the one thing that I struggle with the Bills fans is a lot of people struggle to keep perspective and just stay logical about things. I mean, granted, sports for some people are serious business, but at the end of the day, for me, it's just a game. Strike me as not being as diehard of a fan, but hey, I know, Jeremy, you're a few years older than I am, but I grew up, and it's been noted on this podcast multiple times. The first game I remember watching is the Music City Miracle, so it has been one hell of a run for me as a Buffalo Bills fan. So sorry if I don't jump right on the wagon right at the first moment and start chugging the Kool-Aid saying, let's do this. The Bills are going to win the Super Bowl this year, because it's probably not going to happen.
Right. And this is going to be a long build. Sean McDermott said multiple times, this is a new team. What I think they're trying to do is soften expectations. Like, yeah, we made the playoffs last year, but we're going to take a step back. I mean, they're over under a 6.5, justifiably so. I don't know if it's the over or the under, but you have an unproven quarterback. You traded your starter. 40% of your offensive line retired. You've got major questions. And last year they were buoyed by turnovers. You can't count on that again either. So it's there's reason to believe that they will take a step back. Maybe they take a step forward. Maybe McCarron's great. Maybe Allen wins the job and is impressive. But I think the Bills are expecting a step back. I mean, their tone would seem to indicate that.
Now, last question, Jeremy, before we let you go here. Are you expecting A.J. McCarron to be better than Tyrod Taylor? Because I know there are some people in the group that have said flat out that A.J. McCarron's a better quarterback than Tyrod Taylor. I'm not certainly one of them, but I figure I have you here. I will ask you, is McCarron a better quarterback in your eyes than Tyrod Taylor could be?
I'm not expecting it. I mean, he might be the same, but in a different way. I mean, Tyrod's stat line is 220 yards a game on a good day, with, maybe a touchdown and never any picks. And McCarron might be 280 with 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. At the end of the day, are they going to be conservative again? Are they going to run the ball and ask the quarterback doesn't kill them? Because if they're going to continue to play that way, they're going to continue to lose games because they never put up points. So, can McCarron be better than Tyrod? Sure. And can they win 6 games that way? Yeah, probably. I mean, Tyrod's best year was his first year, and they went 8-8. So, and then last year was his worst year, and they went 9-7. So he can be better, and they can be worse, or he could just be worse. I mean, he's AJ McCarron. He's done nothing to give anybody an idea that he's going to be good. He has played a couple games for Cincinnati, which means that nobody has seen his film. So give him 4 or 5 games to start the season, and then watch what happens when NFL defensive coordinators decide, all right, let's not let him do this, and let's not let him do that, and let's force him to make decisions about this. That's when you find out if somebody's good. The first 10 games, you're just putting down tape, and then the league adjusts, and then it's on you to be better. So, no, I do not expect A.J. McCarron to definitely be better than Tyrod Taylor.
Well, Jeremy, I appreciate it. Hopefully the Bills season coming up is if nothing else interesting. It doesn't need to be good or bad, just interesting. Keep me running because it can be tough. But again, Jeremy White joining us at Jeremy WGR on Twitter. You can hear him and Howard Simon every weekday, 6 to 10 a.m. over on WGR. Jeremy, again, I appreciate you joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.